Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this coach webinar, part of the Game Changing Impact Program. We're now kind of into the first third of the coaching program, and we have another coaching webinar that will come up later on this year in September. I'll give you some more details about that towards the end of this program or this session today. The agenda that we're going to cover, obviously, I would like to introduce Grace from the Career Centre to come in and just give a little bit of an introduction from her side and her perspective. I will then go through some updates regarding the GCIP, including some operations and processes. I've been getting a lot of feedback from coaches in regards to 30-minute sessions perhaps being a little bit too short, or they're maybe experiencing a little bit of challenge in getting into the session. So I thought it'd be worthwhile running a small masterclass on how to run a 30-minute coaching session, and I'm only going to take the practice that I do. And hopefully that should raise, if there's any questions or any other comments and stuff regarding that process, you can bring that into the final part of the session, which would be around the coach forum itself. We'll bring Nathan in from time to time just to sort of add some bits and pieces in. But first, I'd like to introduce the Career Centre, in particular Grace. Grace, who's the Career Centre coordinator. Grace, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hello. So it'd be great for you to give our guys a little bit of an introduction to yourself and the Inno Energy Career Centre.
Yeah, sure, of course. Thank you. Well, I'm Grace, and as you could have seen, I'm the coordinator of the Inno Energy Career Centre, and together with Marloes, we are responsible for the Career Centre. So basically, we help to find jobs for students, internships, jobs, and we help them prepare for the labor market. And we strive to do this by offering our students best education, best preparation, and the best connection in the energy sector. Well, on the screen you already see the different services we support. Let me start with the best education. I'm referring to our top class universities and business schools that we work with, of course. We are active in 17 different countries. And all of our master students, as you probably know, receive a double degree. So from 2 different universities, they receive a degree. And we also add a free access for lifelong learning for them online. The best preparation is what you see on the screen. So within the Career Centre, I'm responsible for organizing, coordinating all career-related activities, which help our students prepare for the labor market. So we have different career events, CV checks, webinars, interview trainings, and of course, besides the Game Changing Impact Program, we also offer an exclusive job board for our current students and recent alumni. So the Game Changing Impact Program is what you are assuming known to and helping us with as well. I think you as coaches are helping us tremendously with preparing our students for their future career. And I think this personal growth, this personal development that our students go through, it's very important for us for keeping our master school as unique and great as it is. And I really think we could not have done it without the help and the effort of the coaches that help our students on a personal level. The last part is the best connections. So besides what I've already said, the job board that we provide, we also organize career events for students to get in contact with our startups, scale-ups that we are connected to. I think we have over 200 different startups, scale-ups, and other partners connected to Inno Energy. but of course also the game-changing impact challenges. We take around 100 students with us. I think this year will be in Paris, so we take around 100 students with us to Paris to join one of the challenges provided by several external companies. And for 3 days, students will work on these real-life challenges, but also have the opportunity to connect and to interact with other companies to help prepare them and get a new connection, hopefully.
Amazing. And obviously the Career Centre is the host of the Game Changing Impact program and the challenges itself. All the other things that you guys do, the community platform, giving students that the very best experience that they can have during their master program. It's one of the things actually Grace and I are actually working through at the moment, which is the completion of the 2017 intake as they've come to the end of their program. It's been an interesting journey for these guys, and as coaches, some of you are new and you've only come in on the 2018 intake. Some of you have been with us since the beginning of this program, and I just wanted to share a little bit of feedback that we're getting from the students right now. One of the most consistent messages that's coming out is you get out of the program what you put in the sense of students committing to the program and being prepared and really working at things has really demonstrated some excellent results in their impact evaluations, and they feel themselves to have grown. Outside of this, people are really valuing having external coaches as a part of their connectivity and network during the master program. Some are using it from a way of enhancing their career position, but others are actually using it from more of a personal development perspective. So I think it's important to understand that, what Grace has presented here as a fact that, this is what the InnoEnergy Career Centre does. They're not just preparing people for the energy industry, they're actually preparing people to be, these students to become the future professionals of these industries as well. So there's a lot of personal development stuff that goes on there as well. So Grace, thanks for coming on and sharing this bit.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, coaches, on your resource center, you'll see that there is a button at the top of the resource center which has which if you click gives you a direct connection to Grace. So if there's anything that you would like to share, if you come across any opportunities in the industry, or if there's any things that you want to know more about, including things like the career webinars that InnoEnergy host, she's your direct person and contact to come across on that, and you can get in touch directly by just clicking on that link. So yes, Grace, thanks a lot. Let's move on swiftly. Now, obviously, we have parts of the Game Changing Impact program that we're running onto. Nathan, I'm going to bring you in at this stage just to talk through a little bit more about the learning objectives, the coaching goal outcomes. And Nathan will give you a bit more introduction on why we are providing, how the coaching should work with things like the GC Index and the impact awareness. Nathan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Hi, everyone. This is just a bit of repetition, really, but because just in the sense of the 5 core learning objectives that we've established in the program. These, just to reiterate, these weren't things that we just made up. This was based on researching firstly the first 2017 intake and really understanding what they needed to help them maximize their impact. So I believe we've gone through the first phase of creativity innovation, as well as engaging and influencing, and it's really interesting actually when you speak to the students, particularly on the webinars. They're asking some very specific questions, and it's interesting how still they've probably not drawn the connection between the impact awareness profile in relation to the learning objectives. So if we just look at creativity and innovation, we've had a lot of students come back to us and go, well, if I'm a big implementer, what are the ways that I can be, help myself being open to new ideas and possibilities? Because I just start to shut down. So you get, again, the skills. If we go back to proclivity plus skill set equals impact, that's ultimately what the role of the coach is that the underpinning is really that equation. Yeah. So just back on that implementer that wants to become more open to ideas, then it's definitely much more talking to them about sort of patience, open-minded, listening to others, skills of sometimes just sitting on your hands and not saying, and actually being patient, some basic skills for implementer to learn around other people's ideas. So with the making me dizzy, Ketan, sorry. So if we got this individual's profile was the next one along, for example, I'm a big polisher, for example, what does that mean about engaging and influencing? Well, we all know that polishers tread that fine balance between inspiration, inspiring others and inhibiting others, inspiring and inhibiting themselves as well. So very much around engaging and influencing for polishers can be something as simple as just biting your tongue. Yeah. Okay. And the way that you communicate to be more positive rather than negative, and both for yourself and with others. So it's these types of skills that we see the students definitely looking for when they refer to their GC index profile.
I just wanted to add a question here, Nathan. When it comes to this type of approach, obviously we want students to identify, understand, and perhaps see this within themselves. Do you think it's wise for coaches to perhaps question in a way that kind of maneuvers the student towards this? So perhaps, like, let's say, for example, if we took this profile and let's say there was a coaching session going on around creativity and innovation, should the coach be asking things like, what is your temperament like when you're in this environment? So getting them to a stage where they start to self-acknowledge that, I could be an impatient person. So, I need to be a lot more patient, or I need to be a little bit more inclusive, or I need to be able to express my opinions a little bit more clearer. So do you understand what I'm asking? I mean, what's your take on something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously when we do a lot of coaching, and what we're seeing through a lot of these profiles is that you have proclivities that lead that sort of you lead with. And then you have sort of proclivities that you need to support that leadership. So, in this instance, this individual is going to lead or want to lead with that, everything around that polisher notion. Yeah, so they're going to want to lead, as we all know, through quality, driving, improving things, whatever it actually be. But then you might go, well, where do you might need to develop sort of proclivities that support that action? So obviously supporting that polisher in terms of engaging and influencing could be the playmaker, skill sets around a playmaker. It could be around the strategist. The strategist proclivities might need to be made aware of to help support, the polisher proclivity. So we certainly have this conversation around leading and supporting proclivities as well, which when you talk to someone in that context, it starts to help them frame their view of how they can be the best they can be, and taking their proclivities into account.
And how important do you feel it is that that we as coaches should also be trying to get the student to think of real term perspective or experience that they've had? So it's something that they've gone into or experienced recently that they can relate back to this. So if you're talking about, how do you increase your playmaker, or how do you include the strategist here? How important is it that we try to emulate that in real life experience, so the So the student gets more of a 360-degree experience, understanding of it, as opposed to just, okay, this is what I've got to go away and do.
Yeah, I mean, context is everything with this. I mean, the GCINS is basically a fundamental framework that helps coaches and sort of the coachee get to the so what's a lot quicker. Yeah, and I think that's where it's the value of the GCINS in a coaching conversation. We definitely want to place that into real life context, either during their studies. We're just releasing a people leader series, for example, which you'll see in a couple of weeks, coming up with dialogue with their head of media, who's a big polisher. And he likens it to when, taking exams, he was a big polisher. And let's say the exam said you've got, 2 hours to do these 3 questions and they all equate to equal marks. He said, but I used to spend, 50% of my time on one question. Yeah. Because I used to agonize over the first question. And then I realized I've only got 50% of the time for the last of the 66% of the marks. So that's a real life conversation to have with a polisher. But yeah, it always, and another one which is very key, we've got this back from the students, a couple of students program directors, is preparing them for their placement years or placement, their work placement. This is really, how do you put this into the context of work placement as well, and things for the student to consider? I see Francois has put a question in, Ketan.
Yeah, is this a good time for one of the coaches to contribute real-time experience? Francois, I'm wondering if the context of the question is, are you asking, is it time for one of us coaches to share an experience, or are you suggesting that coaches should give their experience in a coaching session? Could you? Yes, I get the answer, yes. So you want someone to share an experience of what they've done in coaching. Is there anyone?
Can we hear Francois? Or
we can. Yes, Francois. I'm gonna open up your mic so you can talk. Allowed to talk. Hi, Francois. You've got to unmute yourself. Here we go. Hi, Francois.
Hi, everybody. Yes, it's Françoise here.
Hi.
It's absolutely great to listen to what you are both saying, and I'm sure all the other coaches will concur with me that we have this experience with our students. And yes, I have one particular student who is a very strong polisher, and working with him in the context of him looking at engaging with potential employers, etc. It's been absolutely amazing to find how quickly they develop the skills. They may not be aware of their impact and how their behaviors can be imposing to others if they are overconfident or underconfident, whichever way they are coming across. But certainly, I always link it with their professional and their learnings, which enables them to open their minds as to their behaviors can also adapt and change and grow. And from that point of view, begin to work with them on developing their implementers, strategies, and game changing. And it's a fabulous experience, as I said earlier on, and they are all capable of developing those skills once they are made aware of the potentials and possibilities.
Brilliant. And just from a point, because sometimes this can be difficult because you're doing this on a virtual platform because the person's not in front of you. What are the indicators that you can take so to understand that they have really onboarded this, that they've accepted this, or they are really understand it? I mean, you can't really often see the whites of their eyes, or you can't see the energy transform within them. Is it do you pick this up more from the elevated pace of their and pitch of the way they talk, or how much more energized they are? What are your indications?
I can answer that. I have a structure with all my students. I set them a prep work. So before we have a session, they've got to send me in the context of the specific topic we'll be working on, but considering the specific topic will cover some of the other aspects of the course anyhow. And the specific topics, I will ask a minimum of 4 to 6 bullet points of what they want to achieve out of the session. Then when they come, they are already mentally prepared. And after the session, at the end of the session, I'll always give 3 to 5 minutes to recap, so that, and I tell them why we want to recap. We want to recap because we want to, both of us, understand what they're taking away, what they're going to implement, what they're going to be putting in place, what are their questions. It gives them a chance to ask questions about anything that they're not sure about. And I then ask them to support what they've said in the last few minutes in writing. They all send me a post-session email for their takeaways and their commitments. But how I judge it is by their tone, their questions. They come back at me with their own questions if they're not sure or clear. And their tone will tell me whether there is some doubt, hesitancy, or whatever there. So I'm using all the other aspects besides the visual to capture what's going on in their world and give them the space, and listening to every single word and nuances, intonations, and challenge them when I have a feeling of doubt or uncertainty. I will challenge. What are your thoughts, and so on. So does that answer your question, Ketan?
No, perfectly. Actually, one of the things is actually done quite nicely. I mean, I'm going to get Nathan to wrap up a little bit on this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how to do a 30-minute coaching session, and I was going to cover some of those bases that you've done. So this is great. This is you've answered it and gone beyond. So thanks for that, Francois. That's what's the other side. The other thing that I kind of want to ask you is using the. Do you bring the GC index profile up in the course?
Hello?
Hi, can you still hear me? Hello, Francois.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So when you're actually in your coaching session, do you actually bring the GC index profile up at all? Do you talk around the student's profile so they can see the proclivity when you're giving them a little bit more explanation, or is this more sort of pre-work that the student would do before they even get into the session?
No, I respect the 30 minutes, and I would concur with the other coaches that 30 minutes is short. I never do 30 minutes. I always say to them, plan for a 45-minute session.
Right.
I will give you 45 minutes, and that's my discretion.
Okay.
I need you to block 45 minutes in your calendar. So I always give them that as an indicator as to how long they need to prepare. I will also tell them, in the context of the next session of your chosen topic, at the moment, most of them are focused on career, managing your career, for the simple reason that Nathan said earlier on, and Grace as well. So I will suggest that they look at their GC index profile, and then based on that, we will cover. For me, I've got the GC index in my head. I've looked at their profile. I've got all of that information inside. Right. And I then use that to look at, what are the strong points? What are the points that are needed to be developed? But for me, the GC index is quite a natural process, progress, strategic thinking, and all the rest. Because it's a natural thing, I find it quite easy to crisscross the topics, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I don't ask them to bring it in front of them, because I don't want that distraction. I want the focus to be on what they want to work on, and it's my job to make the connections.
Brilliant. That's really, really good. Nathan, would you like to add anything there?
Also, I was on mute. No, not really. I think it's there's a couple of points, a couple of things there, really. I mean, with the GC Internet coaching perspective, with the profile, I think people get to the what quite quickly. What am I? How do I want to make an impact? So what what am I? You know, is a very quick conversation. But if you go through the simple coaching process of what, so what, and now what, you know, I think a lot of these sessions, you know, are very much of the sort of so what and now what. You know, the GCN that gets that level of self-awareness very quickly, so it enables the coaches to move. We'll come on to the 30-minute sessions a bit in a moment. I appreciate both sides of the arguments, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But just finally on the impact awareness, I mean, Francois mentioned you know, some of the bullet points and things that they want to cover. I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, we've kind of put that together with the impact awareness profile, and it's based on perceived level of competence and importance. You get some students that tick everything as important, so the impact awareness is a good way of helping them prioritize. Equally, you know, there are some bullet points there within, say, engaging and influencing that can be a start of a basis of a structure for a session, which I know other coaches find very useful. You know, if you just pick, I have the skills to engage and influence others. Well, tell me about that. You know, why are you good at that? You know, how do you do that? Could it be better? That type of stuff. So you do have the basis there of the students really helping them to put that priority list in their mind if they can't find it. Equally, as Francois and the other coaches will know, you'll have some students that are very clear on what they want to develop. So they'll focus on that. But yeah, that's very good. It's very encouraging, and thank you, Francois. That's very, very nice to hear, and I've heard that similar from a number of the other coaches as well. So it's good. It's good to see the progress. But I think we're getting on to one of the key points, Ketan, that 30-minute sessions, which I know we agonised over for a few months when we would redesign the program, but we landed on 30 minutes for a number of reasons. But yeah, I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, for everyone else out there that's listening at the moment, you know, you've got the Q&A function within the webinar. Feel free to list your question there, or put it on the chat function, or raise your hand, and I'll open the mic for you. So you're more than welcome to come in. So drop into this. But what I want to do is I just want to go through a little bit of a practical guide towards 30-minute coaching sessions. We can have a conversation about this straight after in the forum, where I would like to welcome everyone's input that's on this webinar about how they feel about that time. I think Francois, you know, to her discretion, has added 15 minutes on. Maybe the potential future of this is a 45-minute session, not a 30-minute session, but we need to sort of discuss that. Nathan's already sort of pulled up. There are key directions and structure that we had to sort of take into consideration when we were building this the restructure of the program for this intake. And I don't doubt that when the 2019 intake comes in, that there will be some more changes there. But for me, it's stuff that's going in the right direction. So a couple of things that I do is pre-session. Francois eloquently positioned this out, you know, the way in which she does it. I don't do as much as Francois does. I don't work the student as much as she would do in terms of, you know, where the topic agenda is and getting all that preparation. But what we do is, from my perspective, I first create, I use a platform like Calendly, which allows the student to book in, as opposed to me going backwards and forwards and saying, these is my only available dates. It means that the student gets into the diary quicker. So all of my sessions get booked in quite quickly, and the student has the ability to make the adjustments. So should they not be able to attend that session, they've got the option to reschedule prior to that actual session taking place, which means that, again, there isn't this situation where I'm normally waiting on a call for them to arrive. Once they're in, I get a notification to say they booked their time in. I send them an email. It's a pre-session preparation email. I'm like, okay, I want you to confirm that you've watched the webinar. The webinar, as you know, that each coaching session precedes a webinar on that topic. it's important that I know that they have watched that webinar, because part of the conversation that I'm going to have with them during their coaching session is about that webinar. I then give them a general overview of the session, but I also want to know what aspects that they want to discuss about their personal development or their near-term experience. One of the things that you guys need to understand is that each master program is unique in its point of delivery. And what I mean by that is some master programs will have internships earlier on in their 2-year program, others will have it later on. So managing your career could be something which is very, very relevant to students at this stage, in some of the programs, because they're actually out hunting for internships, whereas others are actually doing other things. For example, Smart Cities have an innovation journey program. Select students also have a program which is very similar, but it's something a little bit different. So essentially, asking the question as a coach in advance to that, to having that session of what stage are they at in their masters, what are they currently working on, and is there anything that they feel that they would like to discuss with you around that topic, will allow the session to be much more relevant in that moment in time. But what this pre-session email is doing is it's actually building the structure for the 30 minutes that I'm going to be going. So the student almost knows as they come into the session, these are the things that this is how we're going to work. Now, 30 minutes is designed to create laser focus calls. I do this a lot, or I used to do this a lot in my coaching service for businesses. I used to come in and we used to run 30-minute sessions. And really, the whole idea of it is let's get to the point as quickly as we can, and let's get that focus running. So when we are actually in sessions, the first thing we do is we kick off with a general conversation about their master program. That brings the context. So the first minute or two is very much around, how they're getting on. Are they keeping up with their assignments? How's their teamwork stuff going? Just general. I want to get a sense and a feel of the mood that my student is in. Sometimes if they're anxious about something, that could change the whole format of that coaching session. Sometimes if they're a little bit calm and coasted, it could be that they're becoming a little bit complacent in a few areas. So, usually they're tending, they'll tend to say everything's okay, etc. But, here's your opportunity right at the beginning to try and probe into where they're at. We then start to look, we work backwards. We start to address anything specific that they raised in their emails to me. So if they said, look, I want to talk to you about this particular issue, or I'm having a challenge within the team, or I'm struggling with an assignment, or whatever it is, we address that first. And the reason I do that in my session is because that then builds more and more workability. They're more open to listen to you. Now, like in any program or any section, whether it's a lecture or a webinar or whatever, the first part of a webinar tends to be, or the first part of that session tends to be where the student has a lot more attention. As you go on time, that attention starts to deteriorate. So getting them in and looking at working at anything that's personal to them first will in my experience, it keeps their attention quite alive right the way through. Now, 30 minutes is a short amount of time, and time can fly quite quickly. So you've got to be quite disciplined with the time yourself. You've got to know that if you've got to the point, move on. Don't just dither-dather around. Just, you can say, right, let's move on to the next thing. We do look into their GC Index profiles, and we discuss. So, at this point where we've addressed any of the issues, if with the remaining time that we have, we start to look at those coaching outcomes. We start to look at what they took away from the webinar, and then start to look at their profile. So I tend to ask them, do you know what your profile is? And I go, for 2 or 3 minutes, we bring it up, and I start getting them to interpret to me what they believe their profile is in reflection to the coaching outcomes that we're looking for. So if we're looking at how to, at the moment we're doing engaging and influencing. So when we talk about how to engage different proclivities, how to understand when to be more emotive or empathetic and when to be more direct, what is the negotiating techniques. And what we do is I try and get the student to review their profile live and interpret to me where they believe it is. And for me, my coaching responsibility, I feel, is about helping them fill the gaps that they have. As we go along, we start to agree activities from that point. So a lot of the activities I give them are non-intrusive. I tend to give them things where I'm saying, okay, I want you to go away and I do a lot more research rather than practicals. However, when I do give them practical, it's very journaling type of role. So it's kind of saying, go and experience something and I want you to write about it. And I want you to either send that to me so I can review that in between sessions, or bring it to the next session so we can openly discuss that. Journaling is a very, very powerful way of getting students to understand, comprehend, and be able to apply their learning into where they're going. And the other thing that I do is I'm someone that doesn't really like to do administration post. So I'm like thinking to myself, once I complete that session, I need to move on to something else. The same with you guys. You guys are professionals. You have work to do. You've got other things that you've got to attend to. So what I do is I bring the Google Drive form up live on the call, on the session. I'm filling it in as we're going through the call. It just means that if there's any reflection or adjustments that I need to make, I can do those post-session. But I also encourage the student to come on live as well, because it's a Google form. It means both of you can work on the document at the same time. And we actually complete that whole session document together. And that gives us a little bit more continuity. So really, if you're not doing it already, I would recommend something like what Francois is doing. We can create some short templates for you. If you're interested in having those, I can put those into the resource center, maybe an email template, which you could use to draft to your students. But set up a pre-session process. This will give your actual sessions much more structure and context and clarity. Ensure that the student comes to the call prepared. So whether it's something like Francois does, which is set them a pre-session assignment, or actually have an email that's sent back to you from them saying, right, these are the things that I want to discuss with you. These are the things that are important to me. And then you're outlining that these are the areas that I'm going to discuss with you, and these are the areas that are important to me as the coach. Start with any concerns or areas of discussion first. So, if you're doing your, how do you do, or how you're getting on, it's easy to migrate to right, okay, let's have a look at these challenges that you're coming up with, or the thing that you want to talk to. Usually that kind of can take quite a large chunk of your time in that session, but you can start interweaving a lot of stuff. You can start to, when you're talking about challenges, you can bring in reflections, you can bring in experience, you can bring in examples, you can also bring in areas of proclivity. You can even start to align it to the topic that's there. So it's important that you students are feeling that you're addressing things that are important to them first. From there, what you want to then start to do is align areas of the coaching outcomes, any activities. So again, move into a small consultation interpretation mode of their profiles. Make it specific to the topics that we're talking about. You may not want to go against all 5 learning outcomes. You may find it's relevant to only 1 or 2. That's fine. You've got to customize it to each of your students. Set activities. They don't have to be really intrusive, but they need to be something which is going to do 2 things. Number 1 is help the student actualize what you've discussed on your session, and 2, it should normally your activities, if you organize them in the right way, should also create the starter for your next coaching session. So. And obviously complete your administration live. So to give you an example of one, which for one of mine, on the 23rd, we went through, we started to talk, and this guy wanted to, as a part of creativity and innovation, he wanted to talk about the practice of idea validation. He studied up, but he wasn't really too sure about how to take it to the next level. He's worked on different projects. We then basically started to talk about the whole cycle. I gave him a little bit more insight and understanding what copyright and IP is about. Then I got him to do these research. So I gave him 2 research goals. I said, I want you to go away and research the ideation, validation process and develop your own strategy. So I wanted him to come to the next call, which we did earlier last week. We did the call where he then presented to me what he believes his process of validation should look like. We also talked about IP and copyright. We've kind of moved on from that perspective of then understanding, because it was about engaging and influencing. I used this opportunity or example with him to identify why something worked or didn't work. And for example, with this student, he was working on a project which was building some sort of technology for the restaurant industry. They were going ahead. They did the proof of concept. They got to a stage where he had to pull himself out of the project because he was joining the master program. But someone else tried to come in and railroad the whole project. They felt that they were the most experienced in starting a business and wanted to lead. And this had a negative impact with the rest of the team, and the project kind of dissolved. So we used that as the base of learning about how to engage, influence, negotiate, and empower. So we talked through that, and then from that, the student then stemmed out another more relevant topic to where he is currently in his master program, which allowed us to converse. Now, that conversation, in all honesty, went around about 35 minutes for us. I gave a bit of license to it. I'm not always about the whole strictness to 30 minutes, but it is possible. It is entirely possible to be able to construct and converse and get to a point of development within that kind of time span. However, I'm open to the kind of the 30 to 45. So there is some sort of insights into how I run a 30-minute session. Maybe there are some things in here which you're already doing. Does anyone have any questions on this? Anyone want to add or contribute any of their experiences? Feel free to just raise your hand and I can open your microphone so you can come in and talk. Oh, I've got a question come in. Do you use the coaching objectives at all in the session? So Wojciech, essentially we do, but I don't use them in the session. I have them set out when we're doing the pre-session expectations. So we know already that these are the learning objectives that we want in these areas. So what I would probably do is when I'm doing the pre-session email, I'm saying these are the things that we're going to go through. Are there any of these things which are relevant to you right now in your master program? Anything that you want to discuss? But this way, I don't need to make such a deliberate case during the session. Say, right, okay, we've done number 1 now. Let's go to objective number 2. The other thing is you'll also, as a coach, you have the license to stretch or contract or expand on which one of those outcomes and goals. Not all of them will be relevant. Not all of them will be necessary. Not all of them will be needed at that moment in time. One thing that I want to add actually to what Nathan was saying about, when you look through the impact awareness assessments and, where you've got your guides of different bullet points, there is almost a nice overlap and connection point between all 5 of these pillars. So if you look at something like question 12 in the impact awareness assessment, talks about I've improved my personal presentation skills. That's in getting things done, but that your presentation skills and improving your presentation skills doesn't just have to be in presenting a PowerPoint presentation. It actually talks about how you express your views and opinions, how you sell your ideas. So you can connect different learning objectives together as well. So to answer your question, Wojciech, yes, I do use the coaching objectives within the session, but I don't bring them up as specific objectives. I have them all in my pre-prep. I think really one of the things that I would say to make your lives a lot more easier and a lot more effective for within your sessions is to have a prep. I mean, it's good for you. It's a great reminder to the student that they've got a session coming up. It's a great way for you to pick up any indicators of anything that's potentially wrong. You could do it in the way that Francois does it, which is very topic related, and create a level of competency and approach to it. You can be a little bit more light with this, and actually be more specific with, okay, what would you like to talk to about, because I'm going to talk to you about this in the sessions. Or you could be very agile with it and actually give more directive to the student. Say, right, okay, your sessions are coming up. What is it that you feel is most important for you to talk about there? Okay, we've got yes, yeah.
Sorry, it's Nathan here. Just quickly, sorry, Francois. There's two things that one coach does very successfully. Again, it depends on the coach. Is he puts all of his students on the same WhatsApp group? So that just is his preferred method of communication, but it works very well. I think he's got 8 or 9 students, and he has them on the WhatsApp group, and then he will feed them those learning objectives, things to cover or things to think about as he goes through prior to the coaching session.
That's good.
It works really well.
That's really good. That's really good input.
So that's the first thing. He actually uses it also for diary organising, but some people might prefer calendar or email. But yeah, putting them all together, putting all the students together on a WhatsApp group has been very helpful for him, again, for cross-fertilisation of ideas and content and stuff, as well as setting objectives. The second thing, just because Wojciech came on, we also have just released a set of talking heads videos for each role. So again, I can get those to you if they're not already on the coaching webinar. I can get them to you, Ketan, and they're about 10-15 minutes going through each of the roles. So the only reason Wojciech is because the implementer is one of your colleagues at OEE, Wojciech, Olivia Belts. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. That's why you reminded me. She does the implementer one. We've got a head of diversity for Network Rails, a strategist one, head of strategy for FTI, is the game changer one. So there's a bunch there which you can send through to your students as some background learning if they're not already on the coaching.
So thank you for that, Nathan. If you get me the links to them, we'll put them up on the Coach Resource Center, so you guys can pick up from there. And I'll probably also get them added to the Student Resource Center as well. So coaches, even if because students don't have access to your resource center, you can then signpost them to their in their resource center as well. So that's really cool. Francois, would you like to add anything there?
Just a very quick note. Following the structure of the sessions, the 5 topics, very often, as you quite rightly said earlier on, there are some crossovers, and I tend to bring to the attention to my students. We have covered part of for example, if they're doing a presentation, it's not just the PowerPoint, which I tend to ask them to limit to a very few PowerPoints, and talk through and utilize their engaging and influencing and creativity and innovation. So it really reinforces the fact that all those topics have a crossover. Even if you're focusing on one area, it will impact, and bringing it to their attention kind of helps them to be logical about it, as well as taking it in unconsciously.
Brilliant. Thank you. Wonderful. So look, we're at that stage in this webinar now. If there are any questions that you guys have, that Nathan, myself, even Grace can help you with. Is there any input of your own experience currently, whether it's from the previous intake or your current intake that you're working with? Okay, and Ed's got his hand up. I'm going to just open your mic in Ed. Hi, can you hear us? Oh, you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi there, Ketan.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Yes.
I have a question. Actually, one of the students came back to me by email after a week that we had the session 1 to ask about time management, which basically wasn't related to the first session. And because he saw the session as helping him a lot, and he wanted also some advice and tips on how to manage his time better so that he can move faster and more effective through his program. What's your advice when you get questions like this? Well, what I did in this case is that we actually scheduled a session so that I could give him a few tips, because, well, he needed help, so I did help him. But I mean, when you get questions and in situations like this, what do you advise doing?
So this is it's again to the coach discretion, but I tend to keep my email open to my students in between sessions. And the way I normally reassure them is I say, look, if you've got a question, send it to me. If I can respond to you by email, I'll do so. If it warrants jumping on a quick call for 10 minutes, I'll do that with you as well. Now, the other side to this is something like time management is something that is going to be more relevant in their July session when you start doing things like getting things done. So I think there is always, and as Francois just said, there's interlinkage, and you can bring certain things in from certain areas. You don't want to leave the student hanging, especially if they've gone to the energy and the effort to open up to you and say that this is something that they want help on. And at the same time, if you feel that it warrants you to have that additional time and call with them, do so, and actually have that then actually play more of a significant role when the getting things done bit comes again. So if you've had a short session with them about and to answer questions about time management, make that as an integral part of your getting things done webinar. Coaching call. So it means that there is a little bit more consistency there as well. But it's amazing when you open yourself up and you say we are here, I'm here, just contact me if you need to. Some people won't use that facility at all. Others may use it aggressively, but a lot of the time what you can do is then refer back to some of the other calls and conversation pieces that you had during your coaching session. The one last thing that I will add is I think after what Nathan has just brought up, I think maybe having that kind of WhatsApp kind of group to cross-fertilize is quite good as well. Perhaps it's also something where you could, if one student brings up about time management, you can ask all of them first. You know, does anyone else here have something about that? And then you can create a collective point. I'm actually now thinking to start using Voxer rather than WhatsApp. But Voxer basically is just like a walkie-talkie system, which it's free for the students to use, but they can do voice notes to me and I can do voice notes back. So it could be a situation in between sessions. If you don't really want to, if you can't afford to bring up the time to have a call with the student, maybe a 2-3 minute Voxer could be the way forward. So that's what I would do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, I've done quite a lot of time management stuff with organisations the last few weeks, funnily enough, with the GC Index, and I think it would. I mean, ultimately, you're talking about prioritisation, really, and getting things done. I mean, obviously, it's a bit more complex than that, but you know, someone that a time management for an implementer is quite different to time management challenges for a strategist, for example, or a polisher. You know, an implementer, it could just be about action, action about thinking, premature action, therefore doing too many things that aren't that important. Strategists can be around time management, is they just agonize until things are clear. Polishers just put too much discretionary effort in, so they're wasting their time on stuff that's good enough. So there is an underpinning for time management that sits within each of the GC Index proclivities as well, which again, it's another helpful framework to explore that as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
I've got a quick question in from Wojciech as well. Is at the beginning of the program in 2017, you mentioned the differences between coaching and mentoring, and then suggested that we should aim acting more on coaching side of things. Do you still agree with yourself from 2 years ago? I do, actually. The honest answer, Wojciech, is we are here to facilitate. But I think what you have is if you lead with coaching and then bring mentoring in, it's a lot better. It's the kind of thing that's created the question for Ined, for example, from that student. Ined has coached the person, and then as a result of this, it empowered them to raise that question. And then once that question and challenge is brought, then being able to mentor them is much, much more valuable. So I think it's really important that happens. Francois just said, I set my clients tasks to set out their own priorities and time management in context of their top goals. Whilst they set up their priorities, it tends to help them manage their time, being their key goals in mind. So again, the mode of delivery on this is so many different ways. You can practicalize it, you can refer it through into the proclivities, as Nathan's highlighted. I think bringing up a common thread, even like for one of the other coaches who's using the WhatsApp group, I would probably use this as a group discussion, not of that student per se, but more the fact that how are other students managing their time? So it's more of a peer-to-peer coaching that goes on as well. So
I think prioritization as a big polisher is a real challenge for me, a huge challenge. I mean, and so any anchors that someone could provide me will be great. Everything could always be better. You need the anxiety of letting something go when it could be great is just really quite high. So I can't even write a to-do list because I never tick it. I can't. No, seriously, and I've spoken to other polishers as well because I can't tick it off. And because nothing's ever finished. And you're right, Francois, what I do, and you might have seen, I mean, this is getting quite personal, but what you might have seen is we've brought in Simon Etherington, as you know, into the business big strategist implementer. So I will just sit in a room with Simon for half a day and then it says, download it to him out of my head. And then he puts it into a structure for time. Otherwise, the prioritization I find really difficult, as a polisher. So I do have that strategist implementer relationship with Simon where he just does it all for me. And I find that as a great way of helping my time management.
And there within itself is a good example of how, we were talking about earlier on about experiences and how to help certain students come to understand real time. They're going to work, students on the master programs here are, I wouldn't say forced, but they're put into environments of international teams, different diverse cultures and backgrounds. They've got to engage and communicate in different ways. They've got to work together as a team. They've got to lead in their own areas of projects. They've got to be continuously presenting. This is what we've learned from the 2017 intake. And I think the more we can give that small nuance of experience that Nathan just suggested, even in my count, this is what I'm like. I can never stop. I can't tick anything off. So this is what I've done. This is what I've done about it. I've brought something in to help me. That gives good, fresh perspective to students as well. So I think that's it. Nathan says, Dr. GC is my coach. Poor guy.
Well, no, Francois just suggested that I need a coach. I need a lot of things, Francois. Don't worry about that. But Dr. GC is my coach. But I find, as I say, Simon, before he got a good strategist implementer, is great. That prioritization, I hate a blank sheet of paper, so he loves one. So it's that type of that relationship. Anyway, sorry, it's not about me.
No, not
examples of context.
Any other points of view, questions people want to come up with? Okay, even if it's not at this, you can always keep the conversation flowing. Come back into us through the resource center, or email me directly with anything that you have as a point of view. At the end of the day, when we get to September for the next coaching webinar, I really want to kind of pick up more about what you guys would want to learn more about as well. So whether you're watching this as a recording or you're here live on the webinar, I want you to think about this, and throughout the journey between now and the next program the next session we have, which is on the 11th of September, you will get an invitation closer to the time. Just write back to us and say, look, I want to learn more about this, or can we drill down on this? Or if you want, I'm going to be a little bit more forthcoming and proactive with you coaches. I want you guys to come in and share some of the experiences, because by September you're going to be really 2/3 of the way into the program for this year's intake. So we're going to have a lot more context that we can openly discuss. So, you know, if there aren't any other questions at this stage, I want to thank you all for those of you that could make it to be on. I want to thank Grace for coming in. Grace, it's always good to have you on, and we'll feed a lot more of this stuff back as well. So if there's other things that can impact positively for students' experiences that can drive from other areas of the Career Centre, you can pick up on that stuff. Nathan, thank you as ever for all your insights and your polishing. I love it. And so, guys, that brings this session to a close. 11th September is the next one in. You've got your coaching sessions that are going on for June. Some of you may have already done them in May. I know that some of you had obstructive Junes or busy Junes. So thank you for using your initiative in that sense. Last things from me, there's a webinar coming up in July for students on the 11th of July around getting things done, and then they've got their coaching sessions that will follow up from there. Then there'll be the break in August, and then we return back into the program in September. Again, any questions, queries, feel free to contact us. The students webinar for engaging and influencing is now in the Coach Resource Centre. Please make sure you can go in and have a watch of that as well at your free time, or when you have free time. One last thing, just to let you know, as you send your invoices in, please continue sending them in on a timely fashion. But just to let you know that we will be doing an audit on your sessions, just to make sure that all the administration has been completed. And then your invoice will be processed. We do it with much speed and as much speed and due diligence, but just make sure that if you are sending in your invoices, make sure your admin's up to scratch as well. We will continue to push, I know Sitka has said this in the past, making sure that students get onto their forms, and that's why we also do that. So if we've got a situation where you've done your bit, the student hasn't done theirs, Tatiana can get onto the student and let them know to fill out as well. Wonderful. So if there's nothing else today, then I kind of want to say thanks again, and we'll catch up real soon. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Bye.